What happens when a man who once appeared unstoppable suddenly looks fragile? When recent images of Jet Li began circulating online, many viewers paused, not out of excitement, but unease. The movements were slower, the energy felt restrained, and behind the familiar smile, some sensed a quiet warning. This is not a story about rumors. It is a story about cost, the kind that fame never puts on the contract. Stay with us. There are moments when the public does not react with shock or excitement, but with quiet hesitation. This was one of them. The images that circulated did not show scandal, nor did they reveal collapse. What they revealed was something far more unsettling: inconsistency. A familiar figure appeared present, smiling and composed, yet subtly different. Movements lacked their former ease. Energy felt measured rather than effortless. What unsettled viewers was not decline, but contrast. The gap between memory and reality created a sense of unease that words struggled to define. When an image no longer aligns with expectation, the mind begins to ask questions on its own. Importantly, these questions were not accusations. They carried no hostility. Instead, they reflected concern, the kind that arises when something respected no longer feels invulnerable. For years, strength had been presented as stable and enduring. Now it appeared conditional. This is how uncertainty begins, not with evidence, but with perception. A small pause, a second look, a feeling that something has shifted, even if no one can yet explain how or why. Human beings are often more unsettled by what they cannot define than by what they can confront directly. Clear facts, even difficult ones, provide structure. Uncertainty does not. It lingers, expands, and quietly fills the spaces where answers should be. When information is incomplete, the mind attempts to compensate. It looks for patterns, recalls fragments, and connects dots that may not truly belong together. This is not a flaw of logic, but a natural survival instinct. The brain seeks coherence, even when clarity is unavailable. In the case of public figures, this process intensifies. Visibility invites interpretation. Silence invites projection. When official explanations are limited, imagination becomes active. Not because people wish to believe something extreme, but because ambiguity feels unstable. Uncertainty carries emotional weight. It creates tension without resolution. Viewers may not believe every theory they encounter, yet the absence of certainty prevents them from fully dismissing what they hear. As a result, they remain suspended between skepticism and curiosity. This state is uncomfortable, but compelling. It keeps attention engaged, not through fear, but through the desire for understanding. Behind public achievement lies a reality rarely acknowledged in full. The body does not experience success as a concept. It experiences it as repetition, impact, and demand. Long-term performance, especially under global attention, requires a level of endurance that extends far beyond what is visible on screen. Years of discipline often come at the cost of recovery. Schedules leave little room for stillness. Expectations allow limited margin for pause. Over time, even resilience begins to negotiate its limits. The body rarely announces exhaustion dramatically. More often, it signals through subtle shifts, reduced energy, slower responses, a need for restraint where effort once flowed freely. These are not failures, but communications. In highly competitive environments, such signals are frequently ignored or postponed. Strength becomes associated with persistence rather than balance, yet the body operates by different rules. It responds to accumulation, not reputation. What appears sudden to the public is often gradual in reality. Change does not arrive overnight. It reveals itself only when adaptation is no longer sufficient. At that point, attention turns not to achievement, but to sustainability. When practical explanations feel incomplete, people often seek meaning rather than detail. Symbolic frameworks provide language for experiences that feel too complex to be reduced to simple causes. They do not claim certainty, they offer interpretation. Such perspectives speak in metaphor. They describe imbalance instead of damage, overload instead of weakness, correction instead of loss. This language resonates because it shifts focus away from blame and towards understanding. For many, these explanations are not taken literally. They function as reflective tools, ways to process uncertainty without demanding definitive answers. They acknowledge that not everything unfolds in ways that can be measured or predicted. In moments of vulnerability, symbolism provides structure where clarity is absent. It allows people to discuss concern without accusation and consequence without judgment. This is why such narratives persist even in modern contexts. They do not replace evidence, they coexist with doubt, and in doing so, they offer emotional stability when factual certainty remains out of reach. Reaching the highest level of success often narrows the space for error rather than expanding it. At the peak, expectations do not lessen, they intensify. Every appearance carries weight. Every decision is magnified. Every deviation invites scrutiny. What is rarely discussed is the cost of maintaining that position. Achievement demands consistency. Consistency demands control. And control, sustained over long periods, places strain on both body and mind. The public witnesses results, not maintenance. They see moments of triumph without observing the effort required to preserve them. Over time, the distinction between dedication and depletion becomes difficult to recognize. The unseen cost is not always dramatic. It manifests quietly, in restraint replacing spontaneity, in caution replacing confidence. These shifts are subtle but significant. At the summit, the challenge is no longer how to rise, but how to endure. And endurance, unlike ambition, requires careful negotiation rather than relentless pursuit. Beneath the analysis and reflection lies a message that is both simple and easily overlooked. Strength is not defined by constant resistance. True stability comes from recognizing limits before they impose themselves. This story does not ask for alarm, nor does it demand speculation. Instead, it invites perspective. It reminds us that even lives shaped by discipline and success remain subject to balance. Pause is not surrender. Adjustment is not defeat. Listening to one's own signals is not weakness, but responsibility. In a culture that celebrates endurance above all else, choosing moderation can feel counterintuitive. Yet longevity depends not on how much pressure one can withstand, but on how wisely that pressure is managed. Ultimately, the most enduring form of strength is awareness of the body, of boundaries, and of the quiet messages that arrive long before any crisis demands attention. Sometimes, the most powerful response is not to push forward, but to realign. Perhaps the real takeaway is not about one individual at all. It is about how we measure success, what we expect from ourselves, and how willing we are to listen when life asks us to slow down. Because the most valuable protection is not power, it is awareness. If you appreciate thoughtful storytelling that looks beyond the headlines and into the human side of fame, please subscribe to Update X124H, like this video, and share your reflections in the comments. Thank you for watching, for thinking deeply, and for choosing to stay curious but grounded. We'll see you in the next update.